Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very well known and accomplished professional, a manufacturer of LED devices from Orange County, USA, Mr. Steve Marchese. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Steve is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of LightStim, which is a US manufacturer of high quality LED medical and aesthetic devices. So, Steve, before we start talking about LightStim, a few questions for you. You had a
Sure.
remarkable career as a franchisor before becoming CEO of LightStim.
Yeah.
What inspired you to move from
Uh,
your journey into health and wellness?
um, uh, Really, I actually made a couple of moves. I actually went from franchising where we had about 155 franchises that we sold across the U.S.
Hmm.
to building custom homes, and then my wife found this technology, and we started this business, LightStim.
Amazing, amazing. And what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the early years of LightStim? And how did you overcome these challenges?
I think some of the biggest challenges were that we wanted to do everything to the letter of the law. And when we got into the business, there
Mm.
was nobody doing anything to the letter of the law. There was,
Right.
and the law being the FDA, and so we watched um, devices being imported from China going on the shelves of Nordstrom's and Sephora and Neiman Marcus, and people in those companies making millions and millions of dollars. And and our product was really wanted because it was made in the US, so it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
But we were told that if you did that, that could be the death of you with the FDA, and so we didn't. We followed the rules, and we waited until we got FDA clearance, and which is the same as approval.
Yeah.
And we went to those stores and said, we're ready now. We have FDA approval. We can legally go on the shelves, and you
Mm.
can legally sell us. And they were like, we don't want anything to do with you. We lost millions of dollars selling those devices that, were returned and were left on the shelves, and the companies went out of business. And so it wasn't for about 7 years until they would talk to us again, and we ended up going in all those.
Wow.
Uh,
What an
press.
amazing journey. Thank you. Steve, let's talk about LightStim now. For someone unfamiliar, could you explain how LED light therapy works on the body at a cellular level?
Yeah, so it's and kind of what it's being named now. It's adopted about 2 years ago as red light therapy, and everybody
Mm.
kind of understands what red light therapy is. But as a on a kind of a layman's definition is, we are using different wavelengths of light, or you could replace the word wavelengths with colors, because different wavelengths are different colors, and they could be blue or amber, green, red, infrared, which you can't see, the human eye
Mm.
can't see.
Mm.
So you're using different colors or wavelengths of light to stimulate cells to do different things.
Mm.
And they're all positive things. There is no UV light like you would get in a tanning bed or something like that. It's
Mm.
only therapeutic wavelengths.
Mm. And do these benefits of red light therapy vary for different conditions such as skin, health, pain relief, or recovery?
Yes, I mean, they vary widely, and it's almost becoming like Star Wars, if you remember, or Star Trek, the early days where
Yeah.
somebody got injured and they went into a room and all these lights flashed and did all these things, and they come back out 2 minutes later and they're like healed.
Mm.
And we've actually made lights for clinical studies that were successful for reversing blindness caused by diabetes, reversing macular degeneration, healing the chest after open heart surgery, uh, um, reducing inflammation of the brain caused by severe head trauma, and kind of the top of the heap would be a special LED device that activated a chemical that searched out and killed cancer cells in brain tumors.
Hmm.
And those were all successful studies. They
Wow.
haven't really like gone anywhere, and they weren't our studies. We were just supplying the device.
Hmm. And with over 50,000 doctors and professionals using LightStim, what do they value most about your devices?
I think that they're made in America. They're made in Orange County, California, in our factory. And along with that goes quality. So we do not have the best business plan in that our devices never break. I mean, when you buy a device, you could be handing it down to your grandchildren's grandchildren,
Wow.
like
Hmm.
literally. And so so high quality for one, and high efficacy,
Hmm.
which is what it takes to actually get through the FDA. The FDA is there's two different sections of the FDA. There's drugs and there's devices. And
Hmm.
drugs, they've done some crazy things in the last year that we've watched them do. Devices, these guys are hardcore. They don't have any jobs waiting for them in pharmaceutical companies when they retire. They do their job and they do it
Hmm.
right. And if you treat them with respect that they deserve,
Hmm.
they treat you the same way.
Very
They're
interesting.
a nice bunch of guys to work with.
Hmm. Well said. Lightstim is often compared to Kleenex in this field. What do you think has made your brand so trusted and recognizable? Other than, of course, it never breaks down.
Well, I think that um, in those 50,000 locations, a lot of people see our product every day.
Hmm.
And then my wife and I were on QVC, the shopping channel
Yeah.
in the US, and we were on there for about 10 years. And so we were in 99 million households in the US once or twice a month for
Hmm.
10 years. Plus,
Hmm.
we were on television in Italy, in London, in Germany, in the UK, in Australia,
Hmm.
and so uh, we got to be in front of a lot of
Correct.
people for many years.
Absolutely. Well said. How should consumers evaluate whether an LED device will deliver results?
So um, we've got to break some myths here and some things that have been perpetuated
Yeah.
on the internet. And
Yeah.
and one of the things that gets perpetuated on the internet is that it's all about power.
Hmm.
Like if you were into sports cars, like it would be all about power, like the one with the most horsepower wins. But that's not necessarily so. Like sometimes the suspension is very important and the
Hmm.
size of the tires and that sort of thing. And really with LED, what's much more important, like energy output takes not just the back seat of the car, but the all the way to the back of the bus
Hmm.
when it compares to ability to penetrate. And you can think of it this way. Let's say, and they measure output by either joules or milliwatts. So
Hmm.
let's say that a device put out 100 milliwatts, but it did not have the properties to penetrate, or it had not overcome the barriers, which is what it usually is, to penetrate.
Hmm.
And it was basically just lighting up the skin. That device in 1 square inch is going to put some cells in really good shape, but about
Hmm.
19 million cells. It's
Right.
going to put in really good shape. But let's say that you're comparing it to a device that only puts out 20 milliwatts, so like one
Hmm.
fifth of that. But it was able in that 1 inch square to go an inch deep, 3/4 of an inch to an inch into the body.
Hmm.
Well, where the first device affected positively about 19 million cells, those
Hmm.
cells' job was just the skin.
Right.
That was their totality of their job.
Hmm.
When you're going down an inch, you're now treating between 400 and 600 million cells
Mm,
that have a wide variety of jobs in the body and can affect your health and the way you operate in many, many ways.
mm,
So I take penetration over power any day.
amazing. How has LightStim adapted its products to meet both professional medical needs as well as at home consumer convenience?
That's a really good question. We really have two separate product lines,
Okay.
and I think you're going to see a lot of expansion in that in the consumer product line over the next 12 months out of us,
Hmm.
where we've mostly concentrated. I mean, we have 1 million consumers that are using our handheld devices, our consumer devices, um, every day, but we've spent the last 10 years really concentrating on the professional field and have made some amazing breakthroughs, particularly in full body
Hmm.
um, red light therapy in that area. And
Hmm.
but we really run it as two separate sides.
Very interesting. Can you share the story behind the development of the world's first FDA cleared full body LED bed? And what is an LED bed?
Yeah. So an LED bed is just as it sounds. It's the size of a single person bed, 86 inches long and 40 inches wide, about 18 inches off the ground, with around 18,000 LEDs underneath this acrylic. That's what an LED bed is. But I didn't know that where this story starts. This story starts with when my son was 20 years old. It's about 14, 15 years ago. He went in the hospital to get his tonsils out. He was in recovery after. Everything was fine. And then 2 hours later, everything wasn't fine. All his
Hmm.
vital signs went south. His blood pressure shot up to 215 over 165, and he started
Hmm.
hemorrhaging. They put him back into surgery, and they they kept him for 4 days after they patched him up, and they gave him
Hmm.
back to us, and they said, "Your son has uh, dangerously high blood pressure. You need to do something right away because he could have a stroke. He could die." And my wife and I are normally a little bit alternative minded when it comes to medicine first, anyway. And but when somebody tells you that about your son, we went straight to regular medicine, put him
Okay.
on the drugs, which literally could have made him impotent. That and one of the side effects of the drugs, and they dropped his blood pressure 3 points, and we went, all right, forget the drugs, so not for 3 points. And so then we started our normal route, which would have been integrative medicine doctors, anti-aging doctors, um, uh, anything holistic, naturopaths,
Hmm.
Chinese medicine. Nobody could find anything wrong with him. They were like, he's a 21-year-old picture of health California boy. You know, he probably had like, I don't know, 12% body fat or something. Like he was like perfect.
Hmm.
And and nothing worked. Nothing lowered his blood pressure. And my wife and I were pretty distraught over this. And one day he and I were sitting in manufacturing. It was on a weekend. We weren't open. We were just talking and sitting in manufacturing,
Hmm.
and pardon the pun, but kind of a light bulb went off in
Hmm.
my head.
Hmm.
And I went, Chase, that's his name, Chase. I go, you pass out every day about 2 o'clock. Like you've got no energy left. And this kid is the hardest working kid. He is like not your typical, what I would call your typical millennial.
Hmm.
He works his tail off, but at 2 o'clock he would just pass out every day, nothing left. And I said, maybe your cells don't have enough ATP. And for
Hmm.
those of you that don't remember your high school biology, they taught us about androgenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is the fuel, the
Hmm.
gasoline of our cells. Without it, we would not be alive. And and interestingly enough, we produce about 8 to 10% less ATP every decade we're
Hmm.
alive after 20 years old.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, so I thought maybe they don't have enough energy, and that's why none of these protocols work on him, because they
Hmm.
don't have the energy to carry it out. Maybe, and
Hmm.
that was my layman's reason,
Hmm.
reasoning. And I said, let's build a full body something. I didn't even know what to call it.
Yeah.
And we'll use wavelengths that we know that the mitochondria of the cell absorbs and converts to ATP, because that is
Mm.
a fact, and it takes certain red wavelengths is what it does that with. And so although the bed took 6 years to get to fully develop and get through the FDA and all of the barriers that the FDA saw to efficacy,
Mm.
in 60 days, he and an engineer and a welder put together something that looked like a white casket with a
Mm.
straight piece of glass on it. It looked exactly like a white casket with a straight piece
Mm.
of glass on it.
Mm.
And he none of the sophisticated engineering that the bed ended up having to have, but the same wavelengths. And he laid on it 3 days a week. And 2 months later, his blood pressure was 130/80.
Wow.
And we were like, whoa,
Mm.
we should consider this, making this as a commercial venture.
Mm.
This could help a lot of people. And so the first thing we did was went to the FDA and said, we want to build this bed. We want to get it approved, and we'd like a heads up engineering wise.
Mm. Mm.
And you know what they said? Don't bother. You're wasting your money. You'll never get it approved by us. Don't write us a check. Just go home and continue making what you've been making.
Mm.
And I'm like, why would you say that? Why? I mean, like, that's ridiculous. Like, this is just this is like just another example or a different hue of the
Mm.
device that we've been making and you've been approving. It's just a different size. And I said, why, like, why would you say that? And they said, well, they said everything on the market is just lighting up the skin. It's got no penetration.
Mm.
And as I just explained to you a little while ago, if there's no penetration, you're not affecting enough cells in a positive way
Yeah.
to actually get a measurable result.
Mm.
And so I said, well, why aren't they getting penetration? And
Mm.
that started a 6-year trek working with the FDA to overcome these barriers. And we kind of learned three things. When you're talking about full body and you're talking wellness, if you're further, and it's LED, it's not laser. So laser, different story. LED. If you're further away than 3/4 of an inch to the tip of the LED bulb, there's no possibility of you getting good penetration.
Mm.
A laser, yes, but not an LED. And a laser won't do what an LED does.
Fascinating.
So that was why we built a one-sided bed instead of having a top like a tanning bed or something like that. And we made it so you're a 1/4 inch off the tip of the LED bulb, and you flip halfway through the treatment. The bed lets you know when it's time to flip. The second of three things that we had to overcome was we discovered that the acrylic was distorting the light, and it was taking a 15 to a 45-degree angle of light that we needed for penetration. And as soon as it hit the acrylic that you laid on instead of laying on the LEDs, it dispersed out to 180 degrees, had no penetration at all. And we bought every device on the market, and everything had this problem. So then my son spent 2 years working with the 4 largest manufacturers of acrylics in the United States before they came up with an acrylic that actually let the light through without dispersing it.
Wow.
The third and last thing I'm going to bore you with is the FDA's
fascinating.
The FDA's test for efficacy is to raise the tissue temperature of the entire body to around 104 to 111 degrees or Fahrenheit or 40 to 44 degrees Celsius. And you might go, wow, that's hot. And that's a hot temperature outside. But when your skin is that temperature, you would actually describe it as a soothing, gentle, relaxing warmth that makes you want to go to sleep. And so the problem was getting the whole body to that temperature. Nobody had ever passed this test before, because the torso, which has a lot of mass, is going to heat up much faster than your legs and arms. Yet your legs and arms, according to Google, are between 58 and 68% of your total body mass. So more than half of your body is never going to come up to this range that the FDA says this is where benefits occur.
Mm.
And that took us really the full 6 years to overcome that barrier. And what we came up with was, instead of laying on a sheet or a layer of LEDs, we made our bed with 30 separate modules of LEDs. So little separate modules of LEDs underneath this acrylic, the special acrylic. The center of each module had a sensor, and it was a special sensor that we designed and have made for us. And so when you lay on our bed, it doesn't matter where you put your arms and legs, doesn't matter if you move during the treatment, because every millisecond that sensor is determining what temperature that module needs to be for the body part that's touching it, and the temperature and weight of that body part, and it's adjusting it. And we patented that. That got us with that. We passed the FDA test. And then, to my knowledge, nobody's ever been able to pass that test since.
Incredible. What an amazing story. Not just about the LED bed, but how well you have, were able to figure out how to get your son back to good health again. Thank you.
I should tell you this. We found out it wasn't the ATP that we increased. What it was we were releasing trapped nitric oxide in the body. And that's just, in layman's terms, that's a molecule. It's kind of the general of your army of cells. And when you have a lot of it available, it lowers high blood pressure.
Wow. Wow. Steve, I've got time for two more questions for you.
Okay.
Beyond aesthetics and wellness, do you see opportunities for LightStim in areas such as mental health or sports performance?
Sports performance is huge because nitric oxide gives you more strength, more stamina, and a faster recovery time. So definitely in sports, a lot of celebrity level pro athletes have our bed in their home. I don't think we have time for a couple of stories, but unbelievable things on recovery, like things that have never been seen before in recovery, as far as how fast they occur. And the other question was not sports, but
on mental health.
Mental health. So we have sold our LED bed to some psychiatric centers and drug rehab, and the bed is not FDA cleared for this, but they are using it because they're using it for depression. And certain wavelengths of light will release serotonin and dopamine, so it can really alter your mood if you've got the right wavelengths in a good enough quantity of them, and they're getting penetration.
Very neat. And my last question for you, Steve. If you could give one piece of advice to listeners who are curious but skeptical about red light therapy, what would it be?
I would say, don't believe anything you read on the internet. I would go to a professional, and I would ask a professional what they use. And I'd survey. I'd call 25 spas, 25 plastic surgeons, or 25 wellness, like that would be a good one. 25 different wellness and recovery places. They're all over now. They're they're just everywhere. There's thousands of them. And I would call 25 of them and ask them, what devices do you use? What devices do you sell? And why? And ask them why they picked that device.
Amazing. Amazing. And on that note, Steve, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been. Thank you for talking to me about LightStim, about red light therapy, and about the story regarding the LED bed. I'm not sure if we get the LED bed in India, but if we do, I'm sure there'll be many, many buyers for this product in India as well. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.